The Nexus is a 5-player dungeon located in Caldara in Borean Tundra. To do it on normal, you can do this literally as soon as you're level 70, but obviously you need to be 80 to do it on heroic. On normal, it's got 4 bosses, and on heroic, it's got 5 bosses. The first 4 bosses can be killed in any order, however, the typical order is as listed in this video. The first boss is Commander Colog or Commander Stoutbeard, depending on whether you're Horde or Alliance. Both have exactly the same abilities, however, doing a whirlwind. This does huge damage that with low levels of gear can actually one-shot leather and cloth users. It's got a very quick cast time, so fast reactions are needed to avoid it. The boss does a charge where he charges the furthest enemy away and briefly stuns the target. He does an intimidating shout, which is an AoE fear on the party. He does a battle shout, increasing his attack power. He also has clerics, so he'll start with 2 clerics that heal and assist in DPSing with the boss. And when it comes to the tactics, it's fairly straightforward. Have your tankiest range stand further away than anybody else in an effort to soak the charges. Try not to be too cocky when it comes to the whirlwind range because it's deceptively large. It's best just to run out as far as you can until it's cast and then run back in and carry on DPSing. Pull the boss back into the corridor that you've cleared before you arrived at the boss just to avoid getting feared into the next pack of mobs. The reason you really want your range stood out and actually soaking the charge is because otherwise all your ranged and healers are going to have to stack on the boss so you get no charge at all, but now there's that chance of you all getting whirlwinded in the face. But just nuke the boss down, no big deal. And the loot that you're going to get is going to be Cloak of the Enemy, which is a strength, defense and hit cloak, Opposed Stasis leggings, which are intellect, spirit, spell power, cloth legs, Cleric's linen shoes with haste and spell power and an additional socket, and the grips of sculptured icicles with int, crit, spell power, and those are plate gloves. Next up, you're going to have Grand Magus Telestra, and there is an achievement for your mount from this boss. Covering its abilities first, it does a firebomb that inflicts fire damage to the target and all within 5 yards. Ice Nova, dealing small damage and stunning / freezing the group for 3 seconds. Gravity Well, which pulls all players to her and sends them flying around the room. It rapidly deals shadow damage over 6 seconds. Mirror Images, where at 50% and 15% in Heroic, the boss splits into 3 adds, 1 Arcane, 1 Frost, and 1 Fire. In its Arcane form, it polymorphs, which is a 3-second CC, and it time stomps group-wide, causing a 2-second stun. The Frost version Blizzards, just doing AoE Frost damage, and also does Ice Barb, which deals damage with increased damage if frozen. And finally, the Fire version does a Scorch, which is just a single target fire damage, and Fire Blast, which deals about double the damage of a Scorch, but instantly. Now, the tactics to this is fairly straightforward. The boss is vulnerable to interrupts on some abilities and casting speed modifiers such as Curse of Tongues, and also the splits are CCable. So phase 1, tank the boss with any melee and ranged DPS spread out, not being in 5 yards of each other, to avoid the cleave. Gravity Well makes it difficult to heal for certain healers with lots of casts, so off-healing during or after that phase to stabilise is a good idea. Specs that would be particularly strong at this would be things like a Druid throwing a quick trank out, or even an Ellie Shaman or Enhancement Shaman throwing around a few chain heals. When the boss splits, the order to kill the adds is personal preference. Killing the Arcane first is a good idea because it offers the most stuns and disruption to your group, while CCing the other 2 splits, then kill the other 2 after Arcane has died. Of course, with decent gear, worrying about CCing is hardly worth it. You might as well just nuke them all down as quickly as physically possible. Which brings us onto the achievement, which is Split Personality. You need to kill all splits within 5 seconds of each other on both the 50% and the 15% split. The tactic really is just pop cooldowns in these phases and AoE cleave them down. Put an interrupter to focus on the Arcane one as it is very disruptive. It can obviously be quite healing intensive, especially with poorly placed blizzards, but really if you're actually on Discord or something like that doing this, just make sure someone's calling to switch to the lowest health target and always cleave off of that one. The loot you're going to get from the boss is a tanking helmet called Arcane Shielded Helm with strength, a meta socket, dodge and defense, bands of channeled energy, which are some spell power mal bracers with MP5, Spaulders of the Careless Thief, which are leather shoulders with agility, a red socket, hit and attack power, Telestra's Journal, which is an offhand with int, hit and spell power, and if Winter's Vow is on at the time, you can also get the red Winter's Hat. Anomalus is up next, which also has an achievement for your mount. First off, he does Spark, which deals arcane damage to a random player. He does Arcane Attraction, which increases arcane damage taken by a random player for 10 seconds. He creates a Rift, which summons a Chaotic Rift near the boss, and the Chaotic Rift summons Crazed Mana Wraiths, continuously summoning wraiths until the rift is destroyed. These cast arcane missiles at a random player. It also does a Chaotic Energy Burst, which is effectively an arcane chain lightning, It deals damage to the first target and drops 30% each jump. And it also does a charged chaotic energy burst, which whilst the boss is charging a rift, it will do charged chaotic bursts, doing significantly more damage and having no max range. Rift Shield is what the boss puts up when the boss reaches 75, 50 and 25% health, where he becomes invulnerable and begins charging a rift, removing its max range and increasing its damage, as well as increasing the rate of spawn of crazed mana wraiths. This boss sounds complicated, but in fact it's very simple. Kill the boss until a rift spawns, switch all DPS to the rift, switch back to the boss, cleave the adds down. It really is that simple. Nothing else to talk about. The achievement makes it a bit more difficult. The achievement is called Chaos Theory, so you have to defeat the boss without killing any chaotic rifts. This achievement can actually be tough at early gear levels. The best way to tackle it is to have the tank move around 20 to 25 yards every time a rift spawns, in order to outrange the main damage of the rift. The boss can be moved a lot on the different platforms and it's hard to reset, so only the rift spawned at 75, 50 and 25 caused the boss to go invulnerable for 45 seconds. During that phase, have the tank stand closest to the rift and everyone else just stand 15 yards behind the tank. This is to ensure the damage is only hitting the tank. A strong buff for this boss is dampen magic from mages, reducing the total damage and healing received. It also lowers the amount of damage that occurs. Continue moving the boss out of range of the rifts and heal through the invulnerabilities until the boss dies. This one can be a bit of a pain. You've got to stand around just healing for so long before that invulnerability drops off, and you've got to do that a few times. But the loot you're going to get are going to be Rift Striders, which are plate boots with strength, a red socket and some crit, Amulet of Dazzling Light, which is int, spell power and mana per 5 neck, a spell power leather head with int and spirit, and a Mal chest Horbork of the Arcane Wraith, which is agility, intellect, a blue socket, crit and attack power. Next up is Ormorok the Tree-Shaper, which actually has no achievements tied to it whatsoever, so just go kill it. First of all, he does Crystal Spikes, which inflicts high physical damage and knocks the player standing on the spike in the air. He does a Frenzy, which increases physical damage done by 100%. This is used when his health drops below 25% health. He does a Spell Reflect, which reflects the next 4 spells cast on him. Trample, which inflicts low physical damage to all players in 10 yards. And he summons Crystallized Tanglers. These Tanglers target random players and lower their movement speed. Based on the abilities the boss does, the simple tactics to this boss is it's a DPS race. Be careful of the spikes that are spawning and make sure to give them extra space, as the hitbox is very deceptive. Avoid casting on the boss during Spell Reflect. You can either cast low damage spells on the boss to get rid of it, or just wait till the timer expires. Cleave the spawned adds down and be ready to use some personals below 25%, as the boss does significant damage during the enrage period. So basically, nuke him, don't get hit by spikes. GG. For the loot, Forest Frozen Kill is an int, spell power and mana per 5 Mal set of legs with also sockets. Girdle of Ice, which is a plate belt with spell power, crit and intellect. Gloves of the Crystal Gardener, which is a nice pair of cloth gloves with spell power and spirit. And Band of Frosted Thorns, which is a strength and crit ring. And finally, Keristrasza, which does have an achievement tied to it to go towards your Drake that you're trying to get, so we'll talk about that once we go over the basics. Intense Cold debuffs the player with a stack of Intense Cold, dealing 100 damage per second per stack. It applies 1 stack every 2 seconds and is removed upon movement. Crystal Fire Breath is a frontal cone dealing damage, applying a dot and slowing everybody that gets hit. Crystal Chains inflicts damage and roots a random player for 10 seconds. Towel Sweep deals low damage and knocks players away. Enrage increases the physical damage dealt by 10% and attack speed by 30%, which is used when Keristrasza reaches 25% health. Crystallize also inflicts low damage and immobilizes the party. The tactics for this is stack up on the side, because it is a typical dragon fight where you don't want to stand in front, so you avoid the crystallized breath, and you don't want to stand behind, so you get towel sweeped. Dispel roots ASAP, so anybody who can dispel, or if you can power shift out of these as a druid, you should be doing so. Keep moving or jumping to reset the intense cold stacks all the time, and be careful of the enrage at 25%. The achievement is Intense Cold, which is to defeat Keristrasza without allowing Intense Cold to go above 2 stacks. This is a personal achievement, and the easiest way to do this is to focus on one person getting the achievement at a time, funneling all movement dispels, mass dispel, freedoms, or even using a PvP trinket to one person to escape each route. Alternatively, you can use a priest to mass dispel the roots if you're all stacked. This is more likely to be the tactic when DPS is higher and the boss can be burnt down within 1 to 2 route phases. If you're a gnome, of course, you can use Escape Artist to remove the crystal chains, and as a discipline priest, it's worth having 2 of 2 focus power, because you can dispel in half a second or less depending on your haste, and with proper positioning, you should be able to dispel absolutely everyone before it reaches 3 stacks, and everyone can start jumping. As a rogue, you've got Cloak of Shadows. Basically use anything you can to dispel people, so no one ever goes over 2 stacks. And once you've killed the boss, you've got Sphere of the Red Dragon's Blood, which is a nice hit and attack power on use trinket. Flame Bathed Steel Girdle, which is a strength and crit plate belt. Interwoven Steel Bracers, which are a nice agility, intellect, crit, and attack power malbracer. War Mace of Unrequited Love, which is a nice MP5 one-handed mace with spell power and intellect. Crystal Infused Tunic, which is a leather chest with agility, a couple of sockets, hit, and attack power. Dragon Slayer's Sabatons, which is a nice agility, intellect, AP, haste, malboots with a couple of red sockets. Bulwark of the Noble Protector, which is just a tanking shield with strength, block rating, and defense. And finally, Gloves of Glistening Runes, which have got intellect, spirit, a red socket, crit, and spell power. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe for loads more dungeon guides, achievement guides, raid guides, you name it. Plowing through them all. Roll the outro. There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes. Everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name. And you get access to members-only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.